When you think of America, what do you see? Skyscrapers, highways, fireworks on the 4th of July. That's only one version of this country. There's another one, hidden behind motel curtains, buried beneath cornfields, resting quietly inside. Suburban homes where the lights flicker, but the power's never out. In this video, you'll hear some of the most terrifying real horror stories ever reported across the United States. Not folklore, not fiction, but testimonies, recordings, and sightings so unsettling that they've been quietly erased from public record. Until now. Some stories happened decades ago, some just last year. All of them share one thing in common. No one ever walks away the same after hearing them. So if you're brave enough, stay. But know this. These stories don't just entertain. They linger in thoughts, in dreams, and sometimes in your own home. Let's begin. What if the safest place for your child became your worst nightmare? Picture tucking your baby into their crib, locking the door, only to find them somewhere else, somewhere impossible, by dawn. That's the horror that consumed me, Sarah. A first-time mom in a sleepy Ohio suburb. My son Noah was 6 months old, and our new home was meant to be our sanctuary. But something was wrong with that place. Something that didn't want us there. This isn't just a tale of sleepless nights. It's a mother's battle against a force that defied reason, threatening the one thing I'd die to protect. We moved to Maple Lane in April, a cozy two-story with wide windows and a wraparound porch. David, my husband, and I saw it as our fresh start, a place to build memories with Noah. The street was picture perfect, with kids playing and neighbors chatting over fences. But from day one, I felt it. A coldness in the air, a pressure on my chest. At night, the house seemed to breathe. Its creaks too rhythmic, its shadows too deep. I chalked it up to exhaustion, new mom paranoia. Noah was my everything, and I'd do anything to keep him safe. But safety, I'd soon learn, was an illusion in that house. It began with small things. A rattle would appear in the hallway, far from the nursery. The baby monitor would hum with static, even unplugged. I tried to ignore it, but my gut screamed something was off. Then came the night that shattered my world. I put Noah to bed, double-checked the crib, and collapsed into sleep. Hours later, a soft thud woke me, like something dropping in the dark. I ran to the nursery, my heart in my throat. What I saw wasn't just impossible. It was the start of a nightmare that would test my sanity. And it was only the beginning of what that house had planned. The nursery was Noah's haven, painted sky blue with a star mobile twirling above his crib. I was obsessive, checking locks, windows, the monitor's battery. David called me overprotective, but after a miscarriage, I took no chances. That night I kissed Noah's forehead, his fingers curling around mine. The house was still, save for its groans. I fell into a restless sleep, drained but calm. Then at 3 a.m., a thud woke me. Not loud, but so out of place, like something heavy dropping in the nursery. I bolted to the nursery, my pulse racing. The crib was empty. My knees buckled. "Noah," I gasped, scanning the darkness. I found him on the armchair in the corner of the room, about 10 feet from his crib, his blanket draped over him. My 6-month-old, who couldn't crawl, was across the room. I was shaking so badly I could barely pick him up, my mind screaming. How could he get there? He was fine, sleeping soundly, but the crib's sides were locked tight. The next night, it happened again. I found him on the rug right by the window, his tiny body curled on the floor. The window was ajar, a chill seeping in. I slammed it shut, my hands shaking. The crib's sides were locked tight. No one had entered. David suggested I'd sleepwalked, but I knew I hadn't. I stopped sleeping, eyes glued to the monitor, waiting for answers. The house felt alive now, its shadows shifting, air heavy with intent. I checked the crib 100 times. The locks were secure, the window was shut tight. Something was taking my son, placing him where he shouldn't be. What could move a baby without a trace? And why was it targeting Noah? Fear was choking me. I couldn't guess anymore. David installed a night vision camera, hoping to prove it was a faulty crib. I prayed he was right, but the house felt watchful, mocking. At night I heard whispers, not Noah's, like a child humming in the walls. Toys shifted, doors creaked. I was unraveling, but Noah needed me. That first night with the camera, I stared at the monitor, unblinking. Noah slept, his chest rising. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the footage showed the crib shaking violently, like someone was trying to break it apart. Noah stirred but didn't wake. The window in the nursery slid open on its own, inch by inch. My heart stopped as a tall, shadowy figure appeared in the corner, just for a split second, flickering in the frame. It wasn't human. It glided, hovering near the crib. Noah's blanket lifted and he floated toward the armchair 10 feet away. I screamed when I saw it, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the monitor. The screen went black. We ran to the nursery. Noah was on the armchair, unharmed, his blanket draped over him. The room was ice cold, the window wide open. We replayed the footage, our breaths shallow. The shadow had eyes, glowing faintly, staring right at Noah, like it wanted him. As the blanket lifted, a whisper hissed, "Mine." I felt like my heart stopped. This wasn't just a glitch, it was something real, something evil. This thing was claiming my son, moving him like a toy. But what was it? How could I fight something I couldn't touch? I couldn't stay, but I needed answers. David. Searched online while I called Father James, who'd baptized Noah. I showed him the footage, expecting doubt. His face darkened. The priest said it could be something malevolent, maybe tied to the house itself. He came to bless the nursery, sprinkling holy water, but it didn't feel right, like the house was fighting back. "You need to leave," he urged. We moved out within a week and the incident stopped completely. I felt like I could breathe again, but I still needed to know what had happened to my son. On X, I found a Maple Lane group. Most posts were mundane, but one stood out. An old tenant calling the house cursed. I messaged them, learning a chilling tale. Decades ago, a family lived there, their daughter dying in an accident. The mother, consumed by grief, turned to occult rituals to reach her child. Had she summoned something? The house had a dark reputation, tenants fleeing after odd events. Father James confirmed rumors of a shadow on the street drawn to children. The truth hit hard. That mother's pain had opened a door, and Noah's innocence had drawn whatever came through. We'd escaped, but had we closed that door, or left something waiting for its next chance? Our new home was peaceful, Noah's laughter filling the rooms. But Maple Lane lingered in my nightmares, those glowing eyes, that whisper. I kept the footage, a haunting relic I couldn't erase. Father James checked on us, saying he'd prayed for the house. "Some places trap sorrow," he said. "You're free now." But was I? The questions gnawed. Why Noah? Why us? And what was that shadow still lurking in my mind? Months later, an X-post from the new tenants stopped me cold. They'd found a hidden basement room sealed behind a false wall. Inside were candles, occult symbols, and a child's drawing. A tall figure with glowing eyes. My heart sank. Was this the mother's ritual space where she'd called something forth? I messaged them, urging them to leave. They brushed it off, but soon posted about their cat hissing at the nursery, refusing to enter. I knew that fear. Something was still there. Now I live with a truth that chills me. Some doors don't close. Did we escape or just hand the curse to another family? If that shadow waits in that house, hungry for another child who will face it, this isn't just a story. It's a warning. Some homes hold darkness and some shadows never rest. I was 10 when an old lady's warm invitation turned into a chilling trap. Her house hiding a presence I couldn't see but could feel in my bones. It started with the promise of cookies, but ended with me running for my life, her eyes haunting me even now. That day taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Trust can be a dangerous thing. This isn't a story I made up. It's what happened, and it's left me looking over my shoulder ever since. If you've ever felt a chill from a friendly smile, you'll want to hear this. I grew up in a small Indiana town where summer days stretched long and lazy, filled with the hum of cicadas and the laughter of kids playing tag. Our neighborhood was a patchwork of tidy lawns and familiar faces, the kind of place where everyone waved hello. I was invited to this elderly lady's house on one of those endless afternoons, pedaling my bike down Maple Street. Mrs. Lawson, as we called her, was a fixture on her porch, always sipping lemonade and watching the world go by. She asked if I wanted some homemade cookies, which of course I did, her voice soft and grandmotherly, her smile wide as she beckoned me closer. The sun was high, casting golden light across her picket fence, the air sweet with the scent of blooming honeysuckle. I parked my bike against her mailbox, my sneakers kicking up dust as I hopped onto her porch. Mrs. Lawson's house was a faded yellow, its shutters peeling, but it had a cozy charm, or so I thought. As I crossed the threshold, a flicker of doubt stirred in my chest, a whisper of something not quite right. I ignored it, drawn by the thought of warm cookies, but that whisper would soon turn into a scream. The door creaked as it closed behind me, the sound sharp in the stillness of Mrs. Lawson's house. The air inside was thick, carrying the faint sweetness of baked goods but undercut by a stale, musty scent, like clothes forgotten in a damp basement. She led me through a narrow hallway, her slippers shuffling softly on the hardwood floor, and into a kitchen that felt frozen in time. She was acting really strange, her movements jerky, her smile too wide, as if it were painted on. The kitchen was dimly lit, with heavy drapes blocking out the summer sun, casting long, jagged shadows across the faded yellow walls. Mrs. Lawson gestured to a plate of cookies on the counter, their golden edges tempting, but my excitement was fading fast. "I made these just for you," she said, her voice overly cheerful. But there was a tremor in it, a nervous edge that didn't match her words. I picked up a cookie, its warmth seeping into my fingers, but as I brought it to my mouth, I noticed her watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Her eyes kept darting to the hallway, like she was expecting someone. Quick, furtive, glances that sent a shiver down my spine. The hallway stretched into darkness, its silence heavy, oppressive, like a held breath waiting to be released. I took a small bite, the cookie tasting more like ash than sugar, my senses on high alert. The house felt wrong, its stillness unnatural, as if it were listening to me as much as I was listening to it. A faint creak echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, a sound so soft I might have missed it if my nerves weren't already on edge. I froze, my eyes snapping to the hallway, but Mrs. Lawson didn't flinch. "Just the house settling," she said quickly, her smile tightening, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her apron. But her words didn't comfort me. They only made the knot in my stomach tighten further. The creak came again, louder this time, a deliberate shift of weight on old floorboards. I had this overwhelming feeling that we weren't alone in that house, a certainty that gripped my chest like a vice. My eyes darted to the hallway where the shadows seemed to deepen, curling like smoke. as if something or someone was moving just beyond my sight. Mrs. Lawson's chatter faltered, her voice cracking mid-sentence, and she glanced toward the hallway again, her hands now visibly trembling. The air grew heavier, charged with an unspoken tension that made my heart pound in my ears. I set the cookie down, my hands clammy, my instincts screaming to get out. "I think I need to go," I said, my voice small, barely audible over the thudding of my pulse. Mrs. Lawson's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something, panic maybe, or anger. "Oh, don't be silly," she said, stepping closer, her tone sharp now, her hand reaching for my shoulder. "You haven't even finished your milk." But her touch felt wrong, possessive, and her eyes held a glint that sent a jolt of fear through me. I made up some excuse that my mom needed me home, and I bolted out of there, yanking myself free and stumbling toward the door. I raced through the hallway, the darkness pressing in on either side, the air thick with the scent of dust, and something sharper, metallic. As I reached the door, I heard another creak, this time from the stairs leading to the second floor, followed by a faint shuffle, like footsteps trying to be silent. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I threw the door open and burst onto the porch, the sunlight blinding after the dim house. My bike was where I'd left it, and I grabbed it, my legs shaky as I pedaled down the street, the wind whipping my hair, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I glanced over my shoulder once, just once, and saw Mrs. Lawson standing in the doorway, her face unreadable, but the upstairs window curtain twitched, revealing nothing but darkness. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not at first. The fear was too raw, too confusing for my 10-year-old mind to put into words. I stayed away from Mrs. Lawson's house, taking the long way around Maple Street, my heart racing every time I passed her block. I found out later that she lived alone, which made my stomach churn. If she was alone, who was in that house with us? There were rumors in the neighborhood about strange things, whispers of late-night visitors, shadows in her windows when she wasn't home, even a neighbor, claiming they'd heard muffled voices through the walls. Stories spread among the kids, turning her house into a dare, a test of bravery, but I never went near it again. Years later, I asked my mom about Mrs. Lawson, hoping for answers. She hesitated, her face clouding over as she recalled the unease that had hung over our street. Neighbors had their own stories. A delivery left on her porch untouched for days. A dog barking furiously at her empty house at night. A child claiming they'd seen a man slip out her back door at dawn. No one had proof, but the feeling was unanimous. Something wasn't right. That experience stuck with me, shaping how I moved through the world. I'm super cautious now, always double-checking locks, peering into shadows, my pulse spiking at every creak or whisper of movement. Last month, I drove down Maple Street for the first time in years, my curiosity outweighing my fear. Mrs. Lawson's house was still there, its yellow paint now peeling, its windows boarded up, a "for sale" sign staked in the overgrown lawn. I slowed my car, staring at the front door, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow pass behind the boards, quick and deliberate. I told myself it was nothing, but my hands tightened on the steering wheel and I sped away, my heart in my throat. I'm sharing this because I need to know. Was someone hiding in that house, waiting for me to stay longer? Was Mrs. Lawson protecting someone, or protecting me from them? Has anyone else felt that dread, that certainty of being watched from a place that should be safe? If you have, please tell me. What would you do if you knew danger was hiding behind a smile, waiting for the right moment? I need answers before I'm tempted to knock on that door again. It's the last night in our Virginia house, and I'm in bed, the clock ticking toward midnight. I'm 16, restless, when a cold breath grazes the back of my neck, like someone standing over me. I bolt upright, heart pounding, but my room's empty. My name's Ava, and that icy touch wasn't my imagination. It was real, tied to a house that's clung to us like a shadow. This isn't just a creepy story, it's true, and it'll make you rethink the air behind you. Stay with me because what unfolded here will chill you to the bone. That cold breath lingered in my mind, but it wasn't the first time this house felt wrong. We'd lived in this sagging Virginia colonial for 8 years, and it always seemed to watch us. My parents, Susan and Paul, decided to move after a cascade of troubles. Dad's layoffs, my sister's anxiety attacks, the furnace failing despite repairs. Neighbors whispered about the land's grim history, fatal wrecks on the nearby highway, a woman who disappeared decades ago. Mom rolled her eyes at the tales, but I'd felt the house's weight. Lights dimming, my books falling off shelves, a faint hum in the walls at night. The week before the move, the oddities grew. Mirrors fogged up, even in dry air. My sister Claire said she saw shadows move in her peripheral vision, though nothing was there. I tried to blame the chaos of packing, but that afternoon, coming home from school, I saw her. I had even seen a faint specter of a woman from my dining room upon coming home from school by the front door. I stared at it until it disappeared through the front door as soon as my dad came home from work. My heart pounded, my hands clammy. Her form was hazy, like a figure caught in fog, but her presence was undeniable, chilling the room. I stood frozen, staring at the empty doorway until Dad's car pulled in, snapping me out of it. I ran outside, but the porch was bare, the door locked tight. My friend Riley, who lived nearby, had shared stories her grandpa told about a woman who lived here alone, then vanished, her life steeped in loss. I didn't tell Mom or Dad yet. They were stressed, juggling boxes and bills. But the house felt like it was holding its breath, like it knew we were leaving and wasn't ready to let go. That cold breath I'd felt wasn't random. It was a warning, and I wasn't sure we'd escape it. I kept the figure to myself, worried Mom would think I was stressed out. But the house wouldn't stop. The air grew colder, even with the heat. Claire found her necklace tangled in her drawer, though she hadn't touched it. The night before the move, Mom sat us down, her face drawn. The last night in our home, my mom dreamed of the same woman again saying goodbye. She described the woman's voice, soft but heavy, like she was releasing us from something. I felt my skin crawl. I told her about the figure in the doorway, my voice trembling. Mom's eyes widened and she grabbed my hand. "This place," she whispered, "it's holding on to us." We packed with a frenzy, as if speed could free us. Dad was tense, double-checking every lock. Riley came over helping with boxes and pulled me aside. "My grandpa says a woman named Ruth lived here in the 50s. She lost her family in a fire, then disappeared. People say she never left." I pictured the figure, her silent presence. That night, I couldn't sleep, every creak amplifying my fear. Around 3 a.m., I felt it again, that cold breath brushing my cheek. I sat up, flashlight shaking, but my room was empty. On my nightstand, I found a locket, old and tarnished, not mine or Claire's. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing faded photo of a woman, her eyes hauntingly familiar. I hid it under my pillow, too scared to wake anyone, my mind racing with Riley's story. Was this Ruth, or was the house playing tricks on my exhausted mind? We moved the next day, our new house a bright contrast to the old one's gloom. The oppressive air lifted, but I couldn't shake the figure, the cold breath, that locket. A month later, Mom got a call from our old neighbor, Mrs. Hayes. Her voice was raw. We heard from our old neighbors, though, that our next-door neighbor's granddaughter unfortunately took her own life on their property. Her name was Emma, and she'd battled mental health issues. But she told her grandma she felt haunted in the house, seeing a woman in the corners, feeling a chill on her skin. My heart sank. I looked at Mom, her face pale. We hadn't told anyone about the figure or Mom's dream, but Emma's story was too close to ours. I couldn't let it go. I started digging into the house's past, talking to Riley and her grandpa. They spoke of Ruth, the woman from the 50s who lived alone after her family perished. She vanished one night, leaving only rumors of grief, of a river, of a presence that never left. The new owners, a young couple, contacted Mom recently. They'd found a hidden journal in the attic, Ruth's words scrawled across pages describing a cold shadow that followed her. They felt breaths at night, found lockets in strange places like someone was still there. I visited the old house once, standing on the curb, staring at the front door. The windows were dark, but the air felt heavy, like the house was waiting. I didn't go closer, but I felt her, Ruth or something else, watching. Back at our new home, things were calm, but not for long. Last week, I found a locket, identical to the one from that night tucked in my closet. I hadn't brought it with us. It was impossible. I showed Claire, and she froze. I felt a cold breath last night, she whispered, in my room. Mom didn't want to talk about it, but Dad started checking the windows, his jaw tight. I called Riley, desperate for answers. Her grandpa said the land was cursed. Wrecks, vanishings, tales of a woman lingering in dreams, doorways, breaths. I don't know if it's Ruth or the house holding on to pain it can't release. But we're not free. Some nights I wake up, my room freezing, feeling that cold breath again. Last night I found a note in my backpack. No sender, just one word. Stay. The locket's still in my drawer, a reminder that whatever was in that house followed us, and I'm terrified of what it'll do next. The planchette shot across the Ouija board, pointing straight at my brother, Jake. My scream echoed in the cramped closet as my sister's eyes widened in terror. We'd asked, "Who do you want to kill?" A stupid, reckless question, and now something was answering, something we couldn't see. No one was touching the board, yet it moved, fast and deliberate. At 8 years old, I didn't know what evil was, but in that moment I felt it. It was a rainy summer night, and my siblings and I were bored, cooped up in our small house. We had an Ouija board, a dusty old thing we found in the attic. Me, 8, Jake, 14, Ava, 12, and Mia, 11, piled into the closet with a small mirror, thinking we'd see a ghost. We'd heard the stories, spirits talking through the board, answering questions. It sounded thrilling, a way to spice up our dull evening. Our parents were downstairs, oblivious as we giggled and set up our secret game. Looking back, I wish we'd never touched that board. The house had been off lately, creaks at night, doors ajar we swore we'd closed. I thought it was just an old house settling, but now I wonder if we'd invited something in. The closet was stifling, the air thick with dust and anticipation. We huddled around the Ouija board, the mirror reflecting our nervous faces in the dim glow of a flashlight. We started with silly questions. Who are you? Where are you? I was sure Jake and Ava were pranking me, so I pulled my hands off, accusing them of moving the planchette. They swore they weren't, but I didn't buy it. Big siblings always teased me. Mia, usually quiet, was oddly intense, her fingers trembling on the board. The game felt fun at first, our giggles filling the space. But as we asked more questions, the mood shifted. The flashlight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to writhe. A faint tapping came from the closet door, like someone knocking softly. "It's just the house," Jake said, but his voice wavered. Ava's eyes darted to the mirror, swearing she saw something move behind us. I laughed it off, but my stomach knotted. Hadn't I heard whispers in my room last week? Hadn't Jake complained about feeling watched? We kept going, egging each other on. Mia suggested bolder questions. "Are you mad at us?" The planchette slid to yes, slow and deliberate. We froze, hands still on the board. "Stop messing around," I snapped, glaring at Jake. He shook his head, pale. "It's not me." The air grew heavier, like a storm was brewing inside the closet. I wanted to quit, but Ava whispered, "One more." That's when we asked the question that changed everything. "Who do you want to kill?" The words hung in the air, reckless and dangerous, as we waited for an answer we weren't ready for. We all pulled our hands off the board, holding our breath. Then it happened. The planchette shot toward Jake, fast and violent, like it was pulled by an invisible hand. No one was touching it, yet it pointed right at him, unwavering. We screamed, scrambling back, the closet suddenly too small, too dark. Jake's face drained of color, his voice cracking. "What the hell?" Ava grabbed my arm, her nails digging in, while Mia sobbed, curling into a ball. The flashlight died, plunging us into darkness. The tapping on the door turned to a loud bang, like someone or something wanted in. "It's a prank," I yelled, desperate to believe it, but my heart knew better. Jake lunged for the door, yanking it open, and we spilled into the hallway, gasping. The board lay in the closet, the planchette still pointing where Jake had sat as if mocking us. Downstairs, we huddled on the couch, shaking. Ava accused Jake of moving it, but he swore he didn't, his eyes wild with fear. Mia kept muttering, "It wasn't us," her voice barely audible. I replayed the moment, the board's unnatural speed, the way it targeted Jake. Had we done something wrong? Had we broken some rule? The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath, watching us. Last night I'd found my bedroom window open, though I swore I'd locked it. Was it connected? Jake, usually the tough one, looked rattled, avoiding our eyes. "We're never doing that again," he said, but his voice trembled. Ava suggested telling Dad, but I hesitated. Would he believe us? Or would he think we were just dumb kids? The banging echoed in my mind, each thud a warning. We'd played a dangerous game, and something had answered. Something that knew Jake's name. We ran to Dad, spilling the story in a panicked rush. His face hardened, and he marched us outside, handing Jake a sledgehammer. "Smash it," he ordered. We took turns, shattering the Ouija board into splinters under the moonlight. That night haunts me still, though I didn't understand the paranormal then. I vowed never to touch an Ouija board again, but the fear didn't end there. The house felt heavier, like it held a grudge. Jake started sleeping with his door locked, avoiding us. Ava snapped at me for no reason, her eyes red from sleepless nights. Mia withdrew, barely speaking, clutching her stuffed bear like a shield. I had nightmares, dark shapes in the closet, Jake's name whispered in the dark. The banging continued some nights, faint but unmistakable, coming from the attic. Dad said it was pipes, but I saw him check the locks twice. Our family already strained. Dad worked late, Mom was gone. Felt like it was unraveling. Had the board caused this? Or had it just exposed what was already broken? I started researching Ouija boards, learning how they prey on impressionable minds, especially kids. Psychologists warn they can trigger paranoia, even group hysteria, amplifying fears into something tangible. We'd been reckless, asking dangerous questions, inviting chaos. Jake admitted he'd felt off before we played, like someone was watching him. Had we fed into each other's fears, or had the board tapped into something real? The question gnawed at me. I changed after that. No more risky games. I talk to my siblings now, checking in, making sure we're okay. Dad installed a security system, maybe spooked himself. I learned to trust my instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I'll never know what moved that board, but I'm glad we stopped. If you're tempted to play with an Ouija board, think twice. It's not just a game. It's a door you might not close. Have you ever played a game that scared you senseless? Share below. My phone buzzed and my heart stopped. A photo loaded on the screen. Me standing at my new job, unaware I was being watched. The message read, "That's you." I hadn't told him where I worked. I hadn't spoken to him in months. Yet, somehow he'd found me and his shadow was closing in. This wasn't just harassment. This was a warning, and I was running out of ways to escape. My name's Jessica, a 28-year-old single mom living in Chicago, Illinois. 3 years ago, I met a guy named Matt at the mall where I worked. He seemed charming, easygoing, the kind of person you'd grab coffee with and forget. We dated briefly, but his intensity, constant texts, endless calls set off alarms. When I ended things, I thought that was it. I was wrong. Matt didn't just walk away. He clung to me, his messages a relentless tide that followed me for years. Each one a reminder that I wasn't free. Chicago's a big city, but it felt small with Matt lurking in the background. I'd moved apartments, changed jobs, blocked his number, but he always found a way back. At first it was sporadic. Texts every few months, apologies, pleased to meet. I ignored them, hoping he'd fade away. But then came that photo, sent in January 2023, proving he was closer than I'd ever imagined. How did he know? Who was helping him? My hands shook as I stared at the screen, the bustling salon around me fading into a blur. I thought back to the beginning, to the red flags I'd ignored. Matt wasn't just clingy. He was controlling, obsessive, and now terrifying. I'd tried to outrun him, but every step I took, he was there, watching, waiting. The police were my last hope, but deep down, I feared they'd fail me, just like they had before. As I locked the salon's door that night, one question burned. How do you escape someone who refuses to let you go? It started innocently enough. Matt and I dated for 2 months in 2020, grabbing drinks, sharing laughs, but his attention turned suffocating. Texts at all hours, calls when I didn't reply fast enough. The final straw came one night when I was exhausted from work and canceled our dinner plans. I told him I wasn't going, firm but polite. He showed up at my apartment anyway, honking nonstop, calling and texting relentlessly. 60 messages, 100 missed calls in a single night. My phone lit up with his pleas. I love you. Why are you doing this? I was terrified, my son asleep in the next room, unaware of the chaos outside. I yelled through the window, threatening to call the police. He only stopped when he heard sirens speeding off into the night. Shaking, I blocked his number and ended it, calling him out for his obsessive behavior. I thought that was the end, but Matt wasn't done. Weeks later, a text slipped through from a new number. "I'm sorry, can we talk?" I ignored it, but the messages kept coming every few months like clockwork. Apologies, dinner invites, promises he'd changed. Each one chipped away at my peace, a reminder that he was still out there, watching. I tried to move on, focusing on my son, my job, my life. But Matt's presence lingered. I'd see a truck like his near my apartment, catch a glimpse of someone in the mall crowd, and my heart would race. Was it him? I changed my number, moved to a new place, But the texts found me, always from different numbers. How was he doing this? Friends suggested he might be using apps to spoof numbers, but the thought of him tracking me so meticulously made my skin crawl. I confided in my coworker, Mia, who urged me to go to the police. But what could I say? A guy I dated keeps texting me. I knew they'd laugh it off. Then, in the summer of 2022, a new message arrived, this time with a photo of my old apartment building. "Miss this place," it read. My blood ran cold. I hadn't lived there in a year. How did he know where I'd been? Was he following me even then? I felt trapped, my world shrinking under his invisible gaze. I wanted to scream, to make him stop, but I didn't know how. All I knew was that Matt wasn't just a bad ex, he was a threat, and he was getting closer. By October 2022, I was worn down. Matt's texts had slowed, and his latest message seemed sincere. An apology, a promise. He'd moved on and offered to meet his friends. Against my better judgment, I agreed, thinking closure might stop him. We met at a crowded diner, but the moment I saw his eyes, desperate, unhinged, I knew I'd made a mistake. Halfway through the meal, he dropped to his knees, begging me never to leave him, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "I love you, Jessica," he pleaded, tears streaming. I froze, my heart pounding, every instinct screaming to run. I mumbled an excuse, fled to my car, and swore I'd never see him again. I blocked his number again, but the texts resumed, now weekly, relentless. "Dinner again? I miss you." I ignored them, moving on with my life, starting a new job at a salon in a different part of Chicago. I hadn't told anyone where I worked, not even Mia. So when my phone buzzed that January morning in 2023, I wasn't prepared. The photo showed me at my salon station, oblivious with the message, "That's you." My knees buckled. How? I'd been there less than a month. Had he followed me? Was he outside? Right now? I scanned the salon, the glass windows suddenly feeling like a trap. Customers chatted, scissors snipped, but I couldn't breathe. I texted back, my fingers trembling. "Stop stalking me, leave me alone." His reply was instant. "Just wanted to say hi." I ran to the manager, showed her the photo, and we locked the doors. Mia came over, her face pale as she read the texts. "He's dangerous, Jess," she said. "You need the police." But a chilling thought hit me. What if he wasn't alone? The photo was too clear, taken from an angle that suggested someone inside the salon. Was someone watching me for him? I called the police, my voice shaking as I explained everything. The texts, the diner, the photo. They brushed it off, saying I needed his last name or address to file a restraining order. I didn't have it, only his first name and a face I couldn't forget. They promised to look into it, but their tone said otherwise. I left the station, defeated, the photo still burning in my mind. Matt was out there, closer than ever, and I was running out of places to hide. The police's dismissal crushed me, but it also woke me up. Matt wasn't going to stop, not until I made him. I went home, double-checked my locks, and called Mia. She stayed over, helping me plan. We installed a security camera at my apartment, changed my phone number again, and I warned my salon coworkers about Matt, sharing his photo from an old text. I couldn't prove he was dangerous, but I wasn't taking chances. His relentless texts, his photo of me, taught me one thing. He was a threat, and I had to protect myself no matter what the police said. I confided in my mom, who was horrified, urging me to move again. But I was done running. This was my life, my son's life, and I wasn't letting Matt take it. I took a self-defense class, started carrying pepper spray, and learned to spot red flags, controlling behavior, obsession, the kind of intensity I'd ignored in Matt. I wished I'd seen it sooner, but I was stronger now, determined to reclaim my peace. I reported every new text to the police, building a paper trail, even if they did nothing. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was fighting back. Matt's messages slowed after I reported him, but I knew he was still out there. I'd catch myself checking over my shoulder, scanning crowds for his face. The fear lingered, a scar from years of his shadow. The police's inaction showed me the system fails too often, leaving people like me to fend for ourselves. But it also taught me resilience. I reached out to a local women's shelter, volunteering to help others facing similar threats. Their stories mirrored mine, exes who wouldn't let go, systems that looked the other way. It gave me purpose, a way to turn my fear into strength. I still don't know how Matt found me that day at the salon, or if he'll ever stop. But I'm not the scared woman who ran from his texts anymore. I've set boundaries, built a support network, and learned to trust my gut. That's what keeps me going. So here's the question that haunts me. If someone wouldn't let you go, texting, watching, refusing to stop, what would you do? Would you hide? Or would you fight to take your life back? Tell me, because I'm still learning how to be free. What if one wrong choice could cost your family everything? Imagine living in a world where saying no to the wrong people means waking up to a gun at your door. That's the reality I faced at 16, when my father, Mateo, stood up to the cartel in our small Mexican town. His defiance turned our lives into a high-stakes game of survival, where every shadow hid a threat. My name's Javier, and this is the story of how my dad's courage plunged us into a nightmare we barely escaped. This isn't just a crime tale. It's a testament to what it costs to do what's right. We lived in Ciudad Juarez, a dusty border town where the sun burned hot and the nights carried whispers of danger. My parents were divorced, but I saw Dad every day. He was a pillar in our community, running 3 gas stations with a stubborn sense of honor. To him, business was about trust, not shortcuts. But in Juarez, trust was a luxury, and the cartel was always watching. I was just a kid, more worried about soccer than the rumors of black market gas deals. Then one day, everything changed. It started with a phone call Dad took behind closed doors. His face was pale when he hung up, his usual grin gone. I didn't know it then, but that call was the first domino to fall, setting off a chain of events that would force us to live like fugitives in our own home. What I saw next wasn't just a warning. It was a glimpse into a world where power meant fear, and my dad was in its crosshairs. One choice had put us all at risk, and there was no going back. Mateo was a man of principle, the kind who'd rather lose everything than bend his morals. His gas stations weren't just businesses. They were his legacy, built on years of honest work. Growing up, I'd help out after school, pumping gas and joking with customers under the Juarez sun. Mom lived across town, so Dad was my rock, always there with a laugh or a life lesson. But beneath the surface, our town was a battleground, where cartels ruled the shadows, and no one was untouchable. One evening, Dad got a call that changed his tone. He stepped outside, his voice low, tense. When he came back, his eyes were hard, like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. My dad owned a few gas stations. A cartel approached him and asked if he wanted a deal on gas. They offered cheap fuel, siphoned from stolen tankers with profit split. It was a deal most couldn't refuse, not because they wanted to, but because saying no meant trouble. When my dad declined, they made it clear it was not a question, and they'd be coming after him. I overheard him later talking to a friend. "They think they own me," he said, his voice shaking with defiance. "I won't let them." I was 16, Too young to grasp the weight of his choice, but old enough to feel the fear creeping in. The next day, Dad started locking the doors earlier, checking the windows. He told me to stick close, avoid strangers. Juarez had always felt dangerous, but now it was personal. Someone was watching us, and they weren't just going to walk away. What came next wasn't just a threat. It was a shadow that followed us everywhere, waiting to strike. The cartel didn't wait to show their power. A week after Dad's refusal, a black SUV lingered across from our house, its tinted windows hiding watchful eyes. Dad's phone buzzed with unknown numbers he ignored. Then came a day etched in my memory. I waited at our usual cafe for Dad to pick me up after school. He pulled up, but something was off. He comes to my house and gets out of the passenger seat of his car, and in the driver's seat was a shady, scary-looking dude. My stomach churned. This wasn't our driver. Dad forced a smile, his eyes tense. The scary dude is a bodyguard that he'd hired, he explained later, his voice low. The shady dude starts following him as we walked, his boots heavy, his face a mask of menace. I immediately asked my dad, who the heck is that, and why is he following him? He whispered, someone. To keep us safe. Safe? This guy was a walking nightmare, his cold stare cutting through me. His presence screamed cartel. We were watched, and they could strike any time. Life turned into evasion. He couldn't go to the office. He had to take different routes, and we had to meet in different places. Dad switched routes, met me in alleys or markets. The bodyguard was always there, a shadow with predator eyes. One night, I thought that I was going to cry hearing all of this, to be honest. His gaze locked on me like I was prey. It's never fun to learn your family is in a life-threatening situation in Mexico, of all places. I slept with a bat by my bed, jumping at creeks. The cartel was tightening its grip. How far would they go? Then came a confrontation that showed their true reach. Those 3 months were hell. We lived like ghosts, always on edge. The bodyguard was a constant shadow, his presence a cartel warning. Dad's smile vanished, his face lined with fear. I stayed close, terrified of being alone. At night I heard him pacing, whispering on the phone. It's never fun to learn your family is in a life-threatening situation in Mexico, of all places, I thought, my heart heavy. The cartel was a machine, and we were caught in its gears. Then, hope flickered. My dad as well, connected. He knew someone deep inside the intelligence agency. 3 months later, and my dad had returned to pretty much normal life. He had to always remain aware and constantly change his routes still, but the agency had acted. Dad's contact, a high-ranking official, launched a covert sting, dismantling the cartel's local network. Arrests were made, threats faded. The SUV and bodyguard disappeared. Dad went back to work, his grin returning. But the fear lingered, a scar on our lives. Then a note slid under our door, a skull drawing, no signature. Was it the cartel or something else? Dad's face hardened. We're done, he said, but doubt lingered. What if their reach was deeper? What secrets did our house hide? Life returned to normal, or as close as it could. Dad's gas stations thrived, and he laughed again, but I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't free. That skull note haunted me, a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. I started digging on X, searching for answers about the cartel. Most posts were rumors, but one caught my eye. An old article about our house. Before Dad bought it, it had been a cartel safe house, used for secret deals. My blood ran cold. Had we been living in their territory all along? I confronted Dad, showing him the article. His face paled. It's over, Javier, he said, but his eyes betrayed doubt. Weeks later, I found another note under my bed. A single word. Watch. No skull, no explanation. Was it the cartel or someone else? I installed cameras, checked locks, but found nothing. Yet the air in our house felt heavier, like it held secrets we'd never uncover. Now I live with a truth that keeps me awake. Some enemies don't forget. Did we really escape the cartel, or are they still out there waiting? Is our home truly ours, or a relic of their world? This isn't just a story. It's a warning. Stand up for what's right, but know the cost. Because some shadows never fade. A growl tore through the silence of our basement, a sound no animal could make, echoing from the shadows of a room we weren't supposed to enter. I was a teenager, trapped in a house run by a cult, my sister beside me, both of us frozen as the noise grew closer. It wasn't a dog, not even a bear. It was something else, something wrong. This isn't a ghost story from a campfire. This is what I lived through, and it's haunted me ever since. If you've ever heard a sound that made your blood run cold, you need to hear this. I was 16, living in a house that wasn't my home, forced to stay with the leaders of a cult my family had joined. The leaders decided that I should move in with them, along with 4 other teenage girls, all of us under their watchful eyes. I was one of them, a reluctant part of their twisted community, where rules were strict and secrets were plenty. The house was old, its walls creaking with age, located in a small Canadian town where winters were harsh and the nights felt endless. My sister Jenny and I shared a room in the basement, a cold, damp space that always smelled faintly of mildew. It was late morning, the kind of gray day where the light barely reached the small basement window above our beds. We were just chatting and hanging out in her room. Jenny sprawled on her bed, me sitting cross-legged on the floor, talking about school and the friends we missed. The house was quiet, the other girls upstairs with the leaders, leaving us in a rare moment of peace. But that peace was fragile, and I felt it slipping away, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. The utility room next to ours, a cluttered space filled with pipes and tools, was always locked. Off limits, we were told. I'd never thought much of it until that moment, when the air seemed to shift, heavy with something I couldn't name. The silence shattered with a low, guttural sound, a growl that seemed to rise from the depths of the house itself. We hear this growl or roar coming from the utility room area, a noise so primal it sent a jolt through my body, my breath catching in my throat. Jenny's eyes widened, her laughter dying mid-sentence as we both turned toward the sound. It wasn't a dog, we didn't have one, and it wasn't anything I'd heard before. It wasn't like a dog growl or a big cat growl, maybe closer to a bear but deeper, more menacing. A rumble that vibrated through the walls and into my wounds. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of Jenny's bed, my mind racing to make sense of it. The utility room was just beyond our thin bedroom wall, a space we'd been warned never to enter, its door always locked with a heavy padlock. The growl came again, louder, closer, as if whatever made it was pressing against the wall, testing its strength. The air grew colder, the mildew scent sharper, mingling with something raw, almost animalistic. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a pipe was rattling or the furnace was acting up. But pipes don't growl and furnaces don't sound like they're hunting. Jenny whispered, "What is that?" Her voice barely audible, her face pale in the dim light. I didn't have an answer, but the sound answered for me. A deep, throaty roar that seemed to echo with intent, with hunger. I was so confused and immediately frightened, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The cult leaders had always been secretive, their rules suffocating. But this was something else, something alive, something dangerous. hidden just feet away from where we slept. I glanced at the door, half expecting it to burst open, revealing whatever nightmare was on the other side. The growl grew louder, a menacing rumble that seemed to claw its way closer, the thin wall between us and the utility room trembling with each guttural note. Jenny grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin, her voice a desperate whisper. "We need to get out," she said, her eyes darting to the door. But I was paralyzed, my body refusing to move, my mind caught between terror and disbelief. My sister told me to stop and be quiet. I couldn't just do nothing, the fear too overwhelming to stay silent. I opened my mouth and screamed, "Mom!" My voice echoing through the basement, raw and desperate. The growl stopped instantly, the silence that followed somehow worse, heavy with anticipation, as if whatever was in that room was listening, waiting. The growling immediately stopped, but the air didn't lighten. It thickened, charged with a tension that made my skin crawl. I screamed again, "Mom, help!" My voice cracking, tears stinging my eyes. Jenny was on her feet now, pulling me toward the door, her face a mask of panic. "We have to go now," she hissed, her grip tight as she yanked me up. I race upstairs with my sister right behind me, our footsteps pounding on the narrow staircase, the cold air of the basement chasing us as we fled. We burst into the kitchen where Mom was washing dishes, her hands freezing mid-motion as she saw us. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice sharp with worry, her eyes scanning our faces. I tried to speak, but my words came out in a jumbled rush. "There's something in the utility room," it growled. "Mom, it sounded like a bear." Jenny nodded, her breath ragged, her hands shaking as she clung to me. Mom's face hardened, but she didn't laugh or dismiss us. She grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, her movements quick, purposeful, and headed toward the basement stairs. "Stay here," she ordered. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd brought something up with us, something that was still watching. Mom came back up after what felt like an eternity, her face pale but composed. "There's nothing there," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. She locked the utility room door, double-checking the padlock, and told us to stay out of the basement for the rest of the day. But I knew what I'd heard, and so did Jenny. We'd felt it, that primal terror that lingered long after the growl had stopped. The cult house was already a place of fear, with its strict rules and whispered secrets. But that sound made it something else entirely, a place where danger lived in the walls. I still don't know how to explain many of them, but they are things that just stay with you, I guess, that growl echoing in my mind years later, a reminder of the darkness we lived in. I started sleeping with the lights on, jumping at every creak, every whisper of wind, my imagination running wild with what could have been behind that door. The cult leaders never spoke of it, their faces unreadable when we brought it up, but their silence only deepened my fear. Was it an animal they were hiding? A guard for their secrets, or something worse? Something tied to the rituals they performed in the dead of night? Now, as an adult, I've left the cult behind, but the memory of that growl follows me. I live in a different city, far from that house, but last week, I woke to a low rumble in the night, a sound so familiar it sent me bolting upright, my heart racing. It was just a truck passing by, but for a moment, I was back in that basement, frozen, with fear. I'm sharing this because I need to know. Has anyone else heard a sound that wasn't human? A noise that made you question what's real? If you've lived in a place where secrets growled in the dark, please tell me. What would you do if you knew something was hiding, waiting just on the other side of the wall? I need answers before I hear that growl again. Dawn breaks over our campsite by a remote Cascadia lake, and I'm staring at a footprint in the mud. Human-shaped, but too large, too wrong. Just steps from my tent. I'm 24, here with friends, but this mark wasn't here last night. My name's Nora, and that discovery wasn't a prank, it was real. A sign something's watching us in these woods. This isn't just a campfire tale. It's true, and it'll make you rethink your next hike. Stay with me because what happened out here will grip you until the end. That footprint sent a chill through me, but it wasn't the first sign this place was off. We'd come to this secluded Cascadia lake for a weekend escape. Me, my friends Caleb, Mia, and our dog, Rusty. The lake was pristine, tucked deep in the woods, but the air felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Locals had warned us about the area. Hikers going missing, strange tracks found near the water. Caleb laughed it off, but I'd noticed things. Twigs snapping at night, a low hum in the distance, like the woods were alive. The first day was fine. Swimming, grilling, joking around. But that night, as we sat by the fire, the unease crept in. We heard an owl start up its hoodie. It was a cadence that I was familiar with in this area, but something was off about it. I have a bit of a gift for mimicking bird noises, so what I noticed immediately is the ending. Hoot was sort of off it. Almost always sounds like the owl is rolling its hours as the final hoot of the sequence goes. James, not really as outdoorsy as me, says that almost sounds like a person. You know, we end up joking. Listen to it a couple more times, then I do my own attempt at anal noise silence for a few minutes. My stomach twisted. Was someone out there, mimicking the owl? Rusty's ears perked, his eyes fixed on the dark. I tried to shake it off, but the forest felt different now. Riley, a local we'd met at the trailhead, had told us about odd happenings. Campers hearing voices, finding marks like that footprint. I didn't tell the others about it yet. They were already edgy. But as the fire crackled, I couldn't ignore the feeling that we weren't alone, that something was circling us just out of sight. The owl's call left us uneasy, but we tried to laugh it off. Caleb tossed another log on the fire. Mia sipped her beer, but Rusty stayed tense, staring into the trees. I scanned the darkness. The footprint's image burned into my mind. Then it happened again. The owl's hoot, but sharper, more deliberate. I stood, my voice shaky. "That's not right," I said. Mia nodded, her eyes wide. Caleb, trying to lighten the mood, shouted, "Better listen to your wife, dude." Immediately after I shout, we both hear a loud crashing, though almost identical to the sound of the tree falling that Charles did earlier that day. The sound echoed, like a massive branch snapping, shaking the ground beneath us. We froze, hearts pounding. Rusty growled, his fur bristling, ready to bolt. "What the hell was that?" Mia whispered, clutching her flashlight. I grabbed my knife, scanning the trees, but the forest was pitch black. Caleb, usually the joker, went pale. "That wasn't an animal," he said. We huddled closer, the fire's light feeling too small. Riley's warnings replayed in my head. Campers finding broken branches, feeling watched. I didn't want to scare the others, but I felt it too. A presence heavy and close, like eyes boring into us from the dark. We stayed up, taking turns keeping watch. Every rustle made us jump. Every shadow seemed to move. Around 3 a.m., I noticed something. A faint mark in the dirt, another footprint closer to the fire than the first. My blood ran cold. I pointed it out to Caleb, who swore under his breath. "We need to get out of here at dawn," he said. The owl calls stopped, but the silence was worse. Like whatever was out there was waiting for us to let our guard down. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. We sat by the fire, knives and flashlights ready. Rusty pacing nervously. The silence was suffocating. broken only by the occasional snap of a twig. Then, without warning, Boogie starts to go absolutely berserk, barking and growling. He had a stink land issue at this point still, so he was releasing that nastiness as well, and he was threatened. His snarls echoed, his eyes locked on the trees, like he saw something we couldn't. I was absolutely in fear at this point. I will reiterate too that I have hunted mountain lions and bears in my life, and at no point during those hunts was I was shaken and genuinely afraid as this. My hands shook, gripping my knife tighter. Mia grabbed Rusty's collar, whispering, "What's out there, boy?" Caleb aimed his flashlight, but the beam caught nothing. "Whoever that is, you better get lost," I shouted, my voice cracking. The forest stayed silent, but the air felt heavier, like we were being watched. Riley's stories flooded back. Hikers vanishing. Strange marks found near campsites. I didn't want to believe it, but Rusty's reaction wasn't just instinct. Something was out there, and it wasn't friendly. We packed at first light, tearing down tents in record time. As we loaded the car, I found another footprint, fresh, near the water's edge, identical to the first. My stomach dropped. Caleb swore, kicking the dirt. "This place is cursed," he muttered. We drove out, vowing never to return, but the unease followed us. Back in town, I asked Riley about the lake. Her grandpa, a retired ranger, frowned. "Folks have gone missing." "There," he said. "Tracks, noises, shadows, nobody stays long." He mentioned a camper who found a knife, old and rusted, buried near the lake, no owner ever claimed. Last week, unpacking my bag, I found something. A small stone, smooth and cold, tucked in my backpack. I hadn't picked it up, and neither had the others. I showed Mia, and she went pale. "I heard that owl again last night," she said, "outside my window. We're miles from that lake, but I feel it. That same weight, like something followed us. I keep the stone hidden, a reminder of what we left behind. But deep down, I know it's not over. Whatever was in those woods is still out there, and I'm terrified it's not done with us." Someone sneaking up on Alex's tent. Lucas's scream shattered the silence, yanking me awake in my sleeping bag. My heart slammed against my ribs as I froze, the darkness of the forest pressing in. His voice was raw, panicked, barking. Orders to get to the fire? Was it a bear? A person? Something worse? In that remote Cascadia wilderness with no help for miles, his warning felt like a death knell. I gripped my flashlight, praying he was wrong. It was our second night camping in a secluded spot deep in the Cascadia Mountains, a place so far off the grid you could scream and no one would hear. Our group, me, Mark, Ryan, Ethan, Lucas, Sophie, and our dog, Duke, had set up camp near a small lake. Lucas, who hated tight spaces, slept by the fire instead of in a tent. We'd come for adventure, to escape the city, but the forest had a way of making you feel small, exposed. The first night, I'd brushed off an uneasy feeling, chalking it up to being out of my element. Now, with Lucas's voice echoing, I knew my instincts had been right. Something was out there, and it wasn't friendly. The first day had been perfect. Hiking, fishing, roasting marshmallows under a starlit sky. But even then, I'd noticed things off. A rustling in the bushes that stopped when we turned. Duke's ears perking up, staring into the dark beyond our fire. Sophie swore. She saw a shadow move near the lake, but Mark laughed it off, saying it was just a deer. I wasn't so sure. The forest felt alive, watching us, its silence heavy with secrets. That second night, the air turned colder, the fire crackling weakly against the vast darkness. We'd all gone to bed, except Lucas, who sprawled by the flames, his sleeping bag, a makeshift bed. I lay in my tent, uneasy, the memory of those rustles keeping me awake. Then Lucas's voice exploded. Someone sneaking up on Alex's tent. He shouted for us to get to the fire, ordering me to stay put, his tone frantic like he'd seen a figure lurking. My blood ran cold. Duke growled, low and menacing, his hackles raised. I clutched my flashlight, heart racing as the others stumbled out of their tents. "Who's there?" Ethan called, his voice shaky. Lucas was on his feet, waving a stick, eyes wild. "Crouch down, use your words," he yelled, as if facing an armed intruder. Sophie grabbed Duke's collar, his barks echoing through the trees. The forest seemed to close in, every snap of a twig a threat. Had someone followed us? A hunter, a drifter? The nearest road was miles away, and our phones had no signal. We were alone, and Lucas's panic was contagious. I unzipped my tent, flashlight, shaking in my hand as Ethan and Ryan flanked Lucas. "What did you see?" Ryan demanded. Lucas pointed to a stump near my tent, his breath ragged. "It was a person, I swear." We crept forward, Duke snarling, and shone our lights. There it was, a water jug on the stump, glinting in the beam. Lucas blinked, muttering, "It was a nightmare." But then I heard it. A twig snapped nearby, sharp and deliberate in the dark. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a dream. Ethan laughed, nervous. "You scared us over a jug, man?" But his voice trembled. Sophie clung to Duke, her eyes scanning the trees. "Something's out there," she whispered. Lucas shook his head, rubbing his face. It looked so real, a figure sneaking up. I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. Lucas had night terrors before, waking us with wild stories. Was this another? Yet the snap lingered in my mind, too close, too intentional. I swept my flashlight across the forest, seeing nothing but shadows. Mark suggested we build up the fire, keep watch. We did, but tension crackled among us. Ryan accused Lucas of overreacting, while Sophie snapped, "What if he's right?" I stayed quiet, my mind racing. 2 days ago, I'd found boot prints near our camp, bigger than ours, half hidden in the mud. I hadn't mentioned it, thinking it was a hiker. Now I wasn't sure. We sat by the fire, jumpy, every rustle making us flinch. Duke's growls didn't stop, his eyes fixed on the darkness. I replayed Lucas's words, sneaking up on Alex's tent. Why me? Had I been targeted? The isolation hit hard. No help, no signal. Just us against whatever was out there. The night stretched on, endless, each sound a reminder of our vulnerability. I didn't sleep that night, too scared to close my eyes. The sounds, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, kept me on edge. I vowed never to camp in Cascadia again without a gun and trusted friends. We packed up at dawn, abandoning our plans. The group fractured by fear. Lucas barely spoke, haunted by his nightmare. Sophie kept Duke close, her face pale. I couldn't shake the feeling we'd been watched, maybe hunted. Back home, the fear lingered. I kept hearing those snaps in my dreams, seeing shadows outside my window. A week later, I found a news article about a drifter spotted near our campsite, linked to petty thefts. Was it him or someone worse? I told the group, and Ethan admitted. He'd seen a man watching us from the trees the first day, but hadn't said anything, thinking it was nothing. The revelation hit like a gut punch. We'd been careless, assuming the wilderness was ours alone. I researched camping safety, learning how remote sites attract opportunists, thieves or worse, preying on isolated groups. Our camp, far from help, was a perfect target. We'd ignored signs, prints, shadows, Duke's growls, blaming imagination. Never again. I started planning trips with stricter rules. Stick to populated sites, travel in pairs, carry protection. I shared the story with friends, who recounted their own scares, a stranger circling their camp, gear stolen in the night. It's more common than you think. I'll never know what was out there, but I'm glad we left. That night taught me never to camp without backup. Trust your gut, especially in the wild. Check your surroundings, secure your sight, and don't ignore warnings, even if they seem small. If you're camping, stay sharp, because the forest doesn't care if you make it out. Ever had a camping trip turn creepy? Share below. My parents' door locked behind us, sealing us into the cold night. As we stepped into the alley, a deafening crash exploded, metal garbage cans toppling in the dark. My friend and I froze, hearts racing, knowing this wasn't just an animal. We were prisoners of a cult, and that sound was a warning. Disobey and you're never safe. That night broke me open. I'm Rachel, and this happened when I was 17, trapped in a small Canadian town where my family was entangled in a religious cult. The cult leaders forced us to live with them, in a house just a few doors down from my parents across a narrow, shadowy alley. My best friend, Sophie, was dragged into it too. We hated it, so we'd stay at my parents' until late, clinging to the last moments of freedom before returning to that suffocating place. Every night, leaving meant facing the cult's invisible grip. The leaders, Margaret and David, ruled with fear disguised as faith. They demanded obedience, monitored our every move, and punished doubt with isolation. My parents believed it was salvation, but I saw control, eyes watching, rules choking us. That night, at 11:30, Sophie and I stepped out, the air sharp and heavy. We heard garbage cans being knocked around a few houses back, a chaotic clatter that echoed like gunfire. I thought it might be a bear, common in our mountain town, but the sound was too deliberate, too close. My stomach twisted. The cult always knew when we broke rules. Was this their way of reminding us? Sophie grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. We thought it was a bear at first, but the silence that followed was worse, heavy with intent. The alley stretched dark and endless, a path we had to cross to reach the leader's house. Every shadow felt alive, every noise a threat. I whispered, "They're watching us." Sophie nodded, her breath shaky. The cult's power was in its secrets, and that crash wasn't random. It was a message, and we were about to learn what it meant. We didn't want to live with the cult leaders, but the cult's rules left no choice. Margaret and David's house, just a few doors down across the alley, was a prison of silence and scrutiny. 6 of us girls lived there, chosen to be shaped into obedient followers. Sophie and I were the newest, and every moment felt like a test. No music, no laughter, no privacy. Margaret's eyes followed us, her voice sharp with commands. At night, she locked the doors, checking each one twice as if we'd dare escape. We'd sneak to my parents' house to breathe, but returning meant facing that alley, a gauntlet of fear. The cult controlled everything, our thoughts, our time, our futures. Margaret preached about purity, but her rules were chains. No outside friends, no questioning doctrine, no stepping out of line. Once I'd whispered to Sophie about leaving, and Margaret overheard. She made me kneel in prayer for hours, her gaze boring into me. "Rebellion invites darkness," she said. I didn't know what she meant, but it stuck, a threat that lingered. Sophie and I learned to hide our doubts, but the alley was a reminder. The cult saw everything. That night, the clatter of garbage cans shook us to our core. We thought it might be a bear, but the sound was too sharp, too human, like someone slamming metal to get our attention. Sophie's grip tightened, her breath fast. "They know we stayed late," she whispered. I nodded, my mind racing. The cult had spies, members who reported every misstep. Had Margaret sent someone to scare us? I'd seen David talking to rough-looking men in town, their faces hidden, vanishing when I approached. Were they out there now, watching? Another sound came, a scrape closer like boots on gravel. My heart slammed against my ribs. The alley was a trap, its shadows hiding eyes we couldn't see. Sophie's voice broke. What if it's them? I wanted to run back, pound on my parents' door, but they'd send us to Margaret anyway. The cult house was our only option, but the thought of crossing that alley, knowing someone was out there, made my legs heavy. Last week, Margaret had caught another girl, Lisa, sneaking out. She'd locked Lisa in a room for days, calling it cleansing. Was this our punishment? The alley felt alive and we were its prey. We stood paralyzed in the alley, the cold biting our skin, when another crash rang out. Closer, deliberate, like metal slammed against stone. Then we saw it. A massive shadow, 8 or 9 feet wide, darted over our heads, moving too fast, too silent to be natural. It streaked toward the cult house, a dark blur vanishing between the buildings. My scream shattered the night. Sophie's voice blending with mine as we stumbled, terror choking us. This wasn't a bear, it was human, cloaked, sent to terrify us. The cult's claws were tightening. We ran, gravel flying, our breaths ragged. The shadow had gone toward the leader's house, its path deliberate, like it knew where we were headed. Streetlights flickered, casting jagged shadows that seemed to lunge. I glanced back, expecting the figure to chase us, but the alley was empty, the silence heavier than the crash. We burst into the cult house, slamming the door, our hands shaking. The other girls were asleep, but Margaret sat in the kitchen, her eyes glinting. In the dim light, we told her everything, the cans, the shadow, our fear, our words tumbling over each other. She listened, her face a mask, then said, "Where there is great light, there will be great darkness." Her voice was calm, final, like a judge passing sentence. She walked away, leaving us to drown in dread. That shadow wasn't random, it was a weapon. Its size, its speed felt staged, like a performance to break us. Sophie whispered, "They sent it, didn't they?" I nodded, my throat tight. Margaret's words weren't comfort. They were a confession, proof the cult orchestrated our fear. I'd heard rumors of watchers, figures sent to punish disobedience, but I'd dismissed them. Now I wasn't sure. Last month, a boy had vanished after questioning David. Was this their way of silencing us? The alley wasn't just a path, it was their stage. And we were the actors, forced to play, scared. We sat by the door staring into the night, too afraid to move. The alley was still, but the shadow's presence lingered, a ghost in our minds. Sophie's tears fell silently, and I held her, my own fear boiling into anger. The cult wanted us broken, but I wasn't giving in. That shadow was their trick, and I'd find a way to expose it, to escape their cage. But as the night stretched on, one thought consumed me. What else were they hiding? That night in the alley was a wake-up call. A crack in the cult's armor that showed us we had to escape. Sophie and I spent months planning, hiding money, contacting a counselor who understood the cult's tactics. We left in secret, boarding a bus to a city hundreds of miles away, leaving our families and the cult's shadow behind. It haunted us, the memory of that dark figure, Margaret's cryptic words, the fear that we'd never truly be free. But we were, and that was worth everything. Looking back, I see the alley for what it was, a stage for the cult's control. The shadow, the cans, Margaret's words. They were tools to keep us in line, to make us believe disobedience would bring darkness. I'll never know if it was a person, cloaked and sent to scare us, or a trick of fear and shadow. But Margaret's response, "Where there is great light, there will be great darkness," wasn't wisdom. It was manipulation, a way to bind us with guilt. I learned later that others had seen watchers too, figures meant to enforce the cult's will. It wasn't just us. It was their system, built on terror. Escaping was the hardest thing I've ever done. Sophie and I lost our families, our past, but we gained ourselves. We found jobs, a small apartment, and slowly rebuilt. The scars stayed. I jump at loud noises, avoid dark streets, and sometimes dream of that shadow. But that night taught me to trust my instincts, to fight for my freedom no matter how terrifying the cost. I wish I could tell my parents the truth, but I hope they found their own way out. The cult's power was in its secrets, and I refuse to carry them anymore. I share this because control can cage you, whether it's a cult, a relationship, or your own fears. That alley was a mirror, showing me the chains I had to break. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about choosing to live. So here's what I wrestle with. If something or someone was controlling your life, whispering threats to keep you small, would you stay, hoping it changes, or would you run? No matter the price, tell me, because I'm still learning what it means to be free. What if you saw something that shouldn't exist staring at you from the dark? Not a ghost, not a person, but something other. Something that makes your skin crawl and your mind question reality itself. That's what happened to me, Ellie. At 16, in a sleepy prairie town where nothing ever happened. One night, my friend Mia and I saw something that wasn't human, and it changed how I see the world. My name's Ellie, and this is the story of the night I glimpsed something beyond our understanding, lurking in the fields at 3 a.m. This isn't just a creepy tale. It's a mystery that still haunts me, begging to be solved. Our town, Willow Creek, was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, and the biggest scandal was a stolen tractor. Surrounded by endless fields, it felt like the edge of the world, where the stars burned bright and the night stretched forever. Mia and I were inseparable, always staying up late, giggling over dumb jokes. That summer, we turned my sister's room into our sleepover headquarters. Its big windows overlooking the street, the school, and the dark expanse of the fields beyond. It was our safe haven, until that night. We were just kids, caught up in teenage chatter, oblivious to the world outside. But at 2:33 a.m., something shifted. The air grew heavy, the silence too loud. What we saw next wasn't just strange, it was impossible, and it left us questioning everything. Something was out there, watching, moving with purpose. And it was. Coming closer. Willow Creek at night was a different beast. The fields stretched into darkness, their golden stalks swaying like a silent sea. Our house sat on the edge of town, its second-floor windows giving a clear view of the street, the elementary school's parking lot, and the endless prairie beyond. That night, Mia and I were sprawled on a mattress in my sister's room, the windows wide open to let in the warm summer breeze. My sister and her friend were asleep, but we were wired, laughing about nothing until the clock hit 2:33 a.m. The air changed, growing thick, almost electric. Our chatter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Mia's eyes flicked to the window. "What's that?" she whispered. I followed her gaze, my heart skipping. I see two figures coming out of the field. It's obviously dark and they haven't yet come into the streetlights. They were shapes at first, barely discernible against the black of the prairie. But as they moved closer, the streetlights caught them, and my breath caught in my throat. They weren't people, at least not like any I'd ever seen. They moved with purpose, their steps eerily synchronized, heading straight for our house. The night was too quiet, the stars too bright, and those figures were too real. What were they doing out there at 3 a.m.? And why did it feel like they knew we were watching? As the figures stepped into the streetlights, my heart pounded. These two individuals couldn't have been taller than 5 feet. They were identical, both Caucasian, white-colored, totally bald heads, wearing the same long brown robe with the tie at the waist. They sort of looked like they were in monk attire. They honestly just looked like little people. Their faces were blank, almost featureless, their movements mechanical yet fluid, like puppets on invisible strings. They're coming towards the house. I begin to call out to them. Hey, hey you, yelling out names of different people in town. I thought it was a prank, maybe kids from school. But these weren't kids. Mia, what are they? I whispered, my voice shaking. She gripped my arm, eyes wide. They never once acknowledged my calls. Didn't even seem to look up. Appeared to be in discussion with each other. Their heads tilted as if in silent communion. I begin to call out to them in a sort of loud whisper like, hey, hey you. I think I was in a bit of disbelief and thought that maybe it was a prank or something. My shouts grew desperate. Who are you? These beings make it just up to my parents' cars parked outside. Then they immediately turn on themselves and go back in the direction towards the field. We continue to watch them make their way back across the road, and then instead of going back into the field, they start walking down the road. It was sudden, robotic, like they'd hit a barrier. Mia gasped. Ellie, they knew we were here. The streetlights flickered, their forms fading. Why had they stopped? What made them turn back? We stayed up until dawn, too shaken to sleep. We watched them until we can just no longer see them. If you follow that specific road, it just leads to more fields. We continue to watch them make their way back across the road. And then instead of going back into the field, they start walking down the road. The image of those robed figures burned in my mind. Their identical forms, their silent march. We stayed up for another hour talking about what the heck we saw. Mia insisting they were demons. But I felt they were something else, not of this world. My parents brushed it off as a prank, but their uneasy glances betrayed doubt. I couldn't let it go. Mia and I searched online for robed figures in fields, finding only UFO and cryptid rumors. At the library, we dug through town records. Willow Creek was quiet now, but decades ago, farmers reported strange lights, flattened crops. A 1953 article mentioned a monk-like figure vanishing into the prairie. My skin prickled. Had others seen them? In the field, we found a carved stone etched with interlocking circles too precise for a prank. Mia's face paled. Ellie, they left this for us, she whispered. Was it a message or a warning? Years later, those robed figures still haunt me. Moved away from Willow Creek, but the memory of that night clings like damp fog. Mia and I never saw them again, but the stone I found sits on my shelf. Its symbol a riddle I can't solve. I posted about it on X, hoping for answers. Most dismissed. It is a hoax, but one user, a retired farmer, messaged me. He'd seen them too, decades ago, near the same field. They come and go, he wrote. Don't look too hard. My heart raced. Were they still out there? Then came the twist. Digging. Deeper. I found a declassified report from the 1950s buried in government archives. Willow Creek had been a hotspot for unexplained sightings. Lights, figures, even missing livestock. The report mentioned entities in robes, observed near ley lines, ancient energy paths. Our town sat on one. Were those beings travelers, guardians, or something darker? And why our house? Now I'm left with questions that chill me. What were they doing in that field? Were they watching us or something else? If they're tied to the Earth's secrets, what happens when they return? This isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, but they're always watching. I was alone in a basement kitchen when a voice whispered my name, but no one was there. The air turned cold, the hum of the slicer drowned out by a thump that echoed like a warning. I worked at a country club, slicing ham in a prep kitchen no one liked to enter, a place where shadows seemed to move on their own. This isn't a tale I spun for thrills, it's what I experienced, and it's left me questioning what I heard that day. If you've ever felt a presence where there shouldn't be one, you need to hear this. I was in my early 20s working part-time at a country club in upstate New York, a sprawling estate with manicured greens and a grand dining hall. I was working at a country club, downstairs alone in the basement prep kitchen, a space tucked away beneath the main building, far from the chatter of guests and the clinking of glasses. The basement was a maze of rooms. The kitchen is surrounded by a dimly, barely used dining hall and a big set of double doors that led to the sub-basement storage, a cavernous area few ever ventured into. I was new, eager to prove myself, slicing ham for an event that evening, the rhythmic hum of the slicer my only company. The air down there was always chilly, the fluorescent lights flickering just enough to make you question your eyes. On my first day, a senior employee named Gina gave me a tour, her steps slowing as we approached the basement. Gina had told me that she doesn't like going down here at all, her voice tight, her eyes darting toward the double doors. She said to me, "Stay away from the doors and ignore anything you hear from down there." Her warning delivered with a seriousness that made me laugh nervously at the time. I thought she was exaggerating, playing a prank on the new hire, but her expression told me she wasn't joking. That day, as I worked alone, her words echoed in my mind, a quiet unease settling in my chest. I was halfway through a slab of ham when the air shifted, a sudden chill brushing the back of my neck. Over the hum of the slicer, I thought I heard one of my co-workers walk behind me, the faint shuffle of footsteps on the concrete floor, so real I turned my head, expecting to see someone. But the kitchen was empty, the prep table to my left and the storage shelves to my right as still as ever. I shook it off, blaming the long hours, the monotony of the task. But then it came, a voice, low and indistinct, whispering my name from the direction of the dining hall. My hands froze on the slicer, the blade's hum now a menacing drone in the silence that followed. I strained to listen, my heart picking up speed, the whisper fading into the shadows. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling, echoing off the concrete walls. No response, just the faint drip of a pipe somewhere in the distance. I turned back to the slicer, telling myself I was imagining things, but then it happened. A sharp, heavy sound that made me jump. I heard a loud thump like someone had taken a rubber dodgeball and threw it against a door, the noise coming from the direction of the double doors leading to the sub-basement storage, the very doors Gina had warned me about. The thump reverberated through the basement, a hollow, deliberate sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I stared at the doors, their small windows dark, reflecting the flickering fluorescent light above me. The air felt heavier now, the chill deepening, as if something had stirred in the darkness beyond. I remembered Gina's words, "Ignore anything." You hear? But the sound was too real, too close to dismiss. My mind raced with possibilities. A co-worker playing a prank, a rat knocking something over, or something worse, something I couldn't explain. I stood there, slicer still humming, my breath shallow, waiting for the noise to come again. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I turned off the slicer, the sudden silence deafening, my ears straining for any sound. I turned off the slicer and I listened closely, holding my breath, my pulse pounding in my ears. The basement was still, the drip of the pipe the only noise, but the air felt charged, as if something was waiting, watching. I stepped away from the prep table, my sneakers squeaking, on the concrete and moved toward the dining hall, my heart telling me someone might be stuck, needing help. I tried the dining hall door first and poked my head in, but there wasn't anyone waiting. The room empty, its tables pushed against the walls, the dim light casting long shadows that seemed to shift as I looked. I closed the door, my hands trembling, and turned to the double doors of the sub-basement storage. The small windows above the knobs were pitch black, revealing nothing. I hesitated, Gina's warning echoing in my mind, but the need to know pushed me forward. I tried the handle, locked, as expected, but as I stepped back, the sound came again, louder, more insistent. I heard that same thump only twice as loud. Against the doors, a heavy, deliberate bang that made my stomach lurch. It wasn't a prank, not a rat. This was something else, something that knew I was there. I was very freaked out though at that point, my legs shaky as I backed away, my eyes glued to the doors. The air grew colder, the shadows in the corners, the kitchen seeming to stretch, reaching toward me. I called out again, "Is someone there?" My voice cracking, but there was no answer, just the echo of my own words. I wanted to run, to bolt up the stairs and never come back, but I was rooted to the spot, my mind racing with fear and questions. What was on the other side of those doors? Why had Gina been so adamant about avoiding them? And why did I feel with every fiber of my being that I wasn't alone? I finally broke free of my paralysis, my legs carrying me up the stairs two at a time, the cold air of the basement clinging to my skin as I fled. I found Jake, a co-worker who'd been at the club for over a decade, smoking outside during his break. My words spilled out in a rush. "There's something down there." I heard footsteps, a voice thumps against the door. His face darkened, his cigarette pausing mid-air. Jake said, "Just don't go back down there." His voice low, his eyes avoiding mine. "I've been here 10 years, and I've only gone down there once," he added, his tone heavy with something unspoken, a fear I recognized all too well. That day changed me. I finished my shift upstairs, refusing to return to the basement, my hands still shaking as I plated food for the event. Every creak of the building, every distant thud sent my heart racing, Gina's warning and Jake's words looping in my mind. I started noticing things after that. Whispers from co-workers about the sub-basement, stories of odd noises, shadows moving where no one should be. The head chef, notorious for pranks, laughed it off when I mentioned it, but even his smile didn't reach his eyes. The club felt different, its grandeur tainted by the darkness lurking below, a darkness I couldn't unhear. Years later, I still think about that day, the whisper of my name, the thumps that felt like a warning. I left the country club not long after, but the memory follows me. Last week, working late in my new office, I heard a faint thump from the storage room down the hall. A sound so similar I froze, my breath catching, my mind flashing back to that basement. It was just a box falling, but for a moment, I was back, there alone, with something on the other side of the door. I'm sharing this because I need to know. Has anyone else heard a voice where no one should be? Felt a presence in a place meant to be empty? If you've worked somewhere that hid secrets in its shadows, please tell me. What would you do if you knew something was down there, listening, waiting for you to come closer? I need answers before I hear my name whispered again. Dawn breaks over our campsite by a remote Cascadia lake, and I'm staring at a footprint in the mud, human-shaped but too large, too wrong. just steps from my tent. I'm 24, here with friends, but this mark wasn't here last night. My name's Nora, and that discovery wasn't a prank, it was real. A sign something's watching us in these woods. This isn't just a campfire tale. It's true, and it'll make you rethink your next hike. Stay with me because what happened out here will grip you until the end. That footprint sent a chill through me, but it wasn't the first sign this place was off. We'd come to this secluded Cascadia lake for a weekend escape. Me, my friends Caleb, Mia, and our dog, Rusty. The lake was pristine, tucked deep in the woods, but the air felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Locals had warned us about the area, hikers going missing, strange tracks found near the water. Caleb laughed it off, but I'd noticed things. Twigs snapping at night, a low hum in the distance, like the woods were alive. The first day was fine, swimming, grilling, joking around. But that night, as we sat by the fire, the unease crept in. We heard an owl start up its hoodie. It was a cadence that I was familiar with in this area, but something was off about it. I have a bit of a gift for mimicking bird noises, so what I noticed immediately is the ending. Hoot was sort of off it. Almost always sounds like the owl is rolling its hours as the final hoot of the sequence goes. James, not really as outdoorsy as me, says that almost sounds like a person. You know, we end up joking. Listen to it a couple more times, then I do my own attempt at anal noise silence for a few minutes. My stomach twisted. Was someone out there? Mimicking the owl. Rusty's ears perked, his eyes fixed on the dark. I tried to shake it off, but the forest felt different now. Riley, a local we'd met at the trailhead, had told us about odd happenings. Campers hearing voices, finding marks like that footprint. I didn't tell the others about it yet. They were already edgy. But as the fire crackled, I couldn't ignore the feeling that we weren't alone, that something was circling us just out of sight. The owl's call left us uneasy, but we tried to laugh it off. Caleb tossed another log on the fire. Mia sipped her beer, but Rusty stayed tense, staring into the trees. I scanned the darkness. The footprint's image burned into my mind. Then it happened again, the owl's hoot, but sharper, more deliberate. I stood, my voice shaky. "That's not right," I said. Mia nodded, her eyes wide. Caleb, trying to lighten the mood, shouted, "Better listen to your wife, dude." Immediately after I shout, we both hear a loud crashing, though almost identical to the sound of the tree falling that Charles did earlier that day. The sound echoed, like a massive branch snapping, shaking the ground beneath us. We froze, hearts pounding. Rusty growled, his fur bristling, ready to bolt. "What the hell was that?" Mia whispered, clutching her flashlight. I grabbed my knife, scanning the trees, but the forest was pitch black. Caleb, usually the joker, went pale. "That wasn't an animal," he said. We huddled closer, the fire's light feeling too small. Riley's warnings replayed in my head. Campers finding broken branches, feeling watched. I didn't want to scare the others, but I felt it too. A presence heavy and close, like eyes boring into us from the dark. We stayed up, taking turns keeping watch. Every rustle made us jump. Every shadow seemed to move. Around 3 a.m., I noticed something. A faint mark in the dirt, another footprint closer to the fire than the first. My blood ran cold. I pointed it out to Caleb, who swore under his breath. "We need to get out of here at dawn," he said. The owl calls stopped, but the silence was worse, like whatever was out there was waiting for us to let our guard down. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. We sat by the fire, knives and flashlights ready, Rusty pacing nervously. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig. Then, without warning, Boogie starts to go absolutely berserk, barking. And growling, he had a stink land issue at this point still. So he was releasing that nastiness as well. And he was threatened. His snarls echoed. His eyes locked on the trees like he saw something we couldn't. I was absolutely in fear at this point. I will reiterate too that I have hunted mountain lions and bears in my life, and at no point during those hunts was I shaken and genuinely afraid as this. My hand shook, gripping my knife tighter. Mia grabbed Rusty's collar, whispering, "What's out there, boy?" Caleb aimed his flashlight, but the beam caught nothing. "Whoever that is, you better get lost," I shouted, my voice cracking. The forest stayed silent, but the air felt heavier, like we were being watched. Riley's stories flooded back. Hikers, vanishing, strange marks found near campsites. I didn't want to believe it, but Rusty's reaction wasn't just instinct. Something was out there, and it wasn't friendly. We packed at first light, tearing down tents in record time. As we loaded the car, I found another footprint, fresh, near the water's edge. Identical to the first. My stomach dropped. Caleb swore, kicking the dirt. "This place is cursed," he muttered. We drove out, vowing never to return, but the unease followed us. Back in town, I asked Riley about the lake. Her grandpa, a retired ranger, frowned. "Folks have gone missing." "There," he said. "Tracks, noises, shadows, nobody stays long." He mentioned a camper who found a knife, old and rusted, buried near the lake, no owner ever claimed. Last week, unpacking my bag, I found something. A small stone, smooth and cold, tucked in my backpack. I hadn't picked it up, and neither had the others. I showed Mia, and she went pale. "I heard that owl again last night," she said, "outside my window. We're miles from that lake, but I feel it. That same weight, like something followed us. I keep the stone hidden, a reminder of what we left behind. But deep down, I know it's not over. Whatever was in those woods is still out there, and I'm terrified it's not done with us." My heart stopped as I pressed my face to the small window on the basement door, expecting to see the stairs. Instead, darkness stared back. Someone was standing right there, blocking the light, inches away. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat, the knife in my hand useless against the terror flooding my veins. Alone in the country club's eerie prep kitchen, I realized I wasn't alone. Who was it, and how long had they been watching me? I worked the late shift in the basement kitchen of an upscale country club prepping food for events. It was just me down there slicing ham when I heard footsteps behind me and caught a shadow moving in my peripheral vision, thinking it was a coworker. The place was a maze. Dim corridors, locked storage rooms, and a creepy sub-basement no one liked. I'd taken the job for extra cash, but the isolation gnawed at me. The first week, I'd brushed off odd noises, creaks, faint taps, blaming the old building. Now, with that shadow lingering in my mind, I knew something was wrong. The basement was a tomb, cold, dim, with flickering fluorescents that buzzed like angry wasps. I'd been warned about it. Lila, a senior staffer, had hesitated during my tour, saying, "Stay out of the sub-basement, it's off." I'd laughed, thinking she was hazing me, but her eyes were serious. Now, alone, I felt it, a weight in the air, like unseen eyes tracking me. Last shift, I'd found a door ajar that should have been locked, and heard faint scratches from the storage room. Old pipes, I told myself, but doubt crept in. As I sliced ham, the hum of the slicer drowned out my nerves. Then a loud thump echoed from the double doors to the sub-basement, jolting me. I checked the dining hall door. No one. Another thump, heavier, came from the basement doors. My pulse quickened. Was someone stuck? I peeled off my gloves, grabbing a flashlight, and approached the dining hall door again. Empty, just tables pushed against walls. The basement doors with their small windows loomed ahead, dark and silent. I hesitated, Lila's warning ringing in my ears. The club was huge with hidden corners and locked rooms, but I'd never seen anyone down here during my shift. Yet, the footsteps I'd heard earlier, soft, deliberate, felt too real. Had someone slipped in through a service entrance? The thought chilled me. I glanced back at the prep table, my knife glinting under the light, too far to grab. The silence grew oppressive, broken only by my ragged breathing. Whatever was behind those doors, I wasn't ready to face it alone. I forced myself to the basement doors, flashlight trembling. The small windows above the knobs should have shown the stairs, lit by hallway light. I pressed my face to the glass, seeing nothing but black, like someone was standing right there, blocking the light. Terror surged, and I sprinted upstairs to the main kitchen, heart pounding. My legs burned as I burst into the bustling kitchen, the clatter of pans a stark contrast to the basement's silence. "Sam!" I gasped, finding my co-worker, a grizzled veteran with a no-nonsense vibe. "There's someone down there." I spilled everything, footsteps, thumps, the darkness at the window. His face tightened, eyes flicking to the basement stairs. "You didn't go in, did you?" he asked, voice low. I shook my head, still shaking. Sam nodded, saying the sub-basement was trouble, always had been, and told me to stay away. "I've been here 10 years, he added, "and I only went down once, never again." His words hit hard. Lila's warning, now Sam's. Something was wrong with that place. I replayed the moment at the door, the suffocating sense of a presence just inches away. Had someone been hiding, watching me work? The club had security, but the basement was a blind spot, with old locks and forgotten entrances. Last week, a delivery guy mentioned seeing a man loitering near the service door, but security brushed it off. Was it him? The crew kept working, but I couldn't focus. My mind stuck on that blacked-out window. Sam stayed close, checking on me, his usual gruff humor gone. "Stick to the main floor," he said, handing me a soda. I nodded, but the fear clung, a shadow I couldn't shake. Someone had been down there, and they'd wanted me to know it. I told Sam everything, my voice shaky. He confirmed the basement. It was bad news, saying, "Don't go down there alone." I was rattled, realizing I'd been too careless. Working solo in that isolated space, I vowed to be more vigilant. The fear didn't fade. I kept seeing that blacked-out window in my mind, feeling eyes on me even in the main kitchen. At home, I checked my locks twice, jumping at every noise, haunted by the thought of that unseen figure. The next shift, I refused to work downstairs, sticking to the main floor. Sam backed me up, but the manager shrugged it off, saying I was jumpy. I dug into the club's history, learning about break-ins years ago, thieves slipping through unsecured basement doors. A co-worker whispered about a maintenance worker fired for creeping around after hours. Could it have been him? Last night, I'd found a scratched lock on the service entrance, unreported. Was someone still getting in? I researched workplace safety, discovering how isolated areas like basements attract trouble. Vandals, stalkers, or worse. Women working alone are especially vulnerable, and I'd been naive, ignoring Lila's warning, dismissing noises. I started carrying a whistle, checking exits, and reporting every oddity. I told co-workers who shared their own scares. A shadow in the parking lot, a door left open. It wasn't just me, the club was a target. I changed my habits. No more solo basement shifts. I buddy up, keep my phone charged, and trust my instincts. If something feels off, I act. I'll never know who was behind that door, but I'm thankful. I ran. That night taught me to stay alert, especially alone. If you work late or in secluded spots, secure your space, know your exits, and don't ignore red flags. Ever felt watched at work? Share your story below. The footsteps echoed behind me, slow and deliberate. In the dead silence of the basement kitchen, I was alone, or so I thought. My knife froze mid-slice, my heart slamming as I spun around to face nothing, just shadows. But those steps weren't my imagination. Something was down here with me, and it wasn't human. That moment turned my job into a nightmare. My name's Olivia, a 22-year-old working as a prep cook at a fancy country club in upstate New York. I was alone in the basement, prep kitchen, a cold, cavernous space buried beneath the club's polished dining rooms. It was my first month, and I loved the quiet of the night shift until the stories started. My coworker, Carla, a veteran line cook, warned me on day one, "Stay away from the back doors down there. It's not right." Her eyes were serious, but I brushed it off as hazing. Old buildings creak, right? I wasn't so sure anymore. The basement was a maze of dim lights and concrete walls, the air heavy with the hum of freezers. My station faced a prep table, but behind me were corridors leading to a rarely used dining hall and a sub-basement storage room, both locked and off-limits. Carla's warning echoed as I chopped vegetables, the only sound my knife against the board. I was used to being alone, but that night felt different, thicker, like the shadows were watching. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone. The club was nearly empty, the event upstairs winding down, yet I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. Then it came. Those footsteps, soft but clear, right behind me. I froze, my breath catching. They weren't mine. I turned, knife in hand, but the corridor was empty, the shadows still. My pulse raced. Was it a prank, a rat, or something worse? Carla's words rang in my ears. Not right. I tried to focus, but the basement felt alive and I was trapped in its grip. I gripped my knife, my hands trembling, trying to convince myself the footsteps were nothing. Just the building settling, I thought, or my mind playing tricks. But the basement's chill seeped into my bones and Carla's warning loomed larger. I turned back to my cutting board, forcing myself to focus, but every sound, a drip, a hum, felt like a threat. The corridors behind me were dark, leading to places I'd never explored. I wanted to laugh it off, but my pulse wouldn't slow. Then it came. A loud thump like a rubber dodgeball slammed against a door. I jumped, the knife clattering to the table. It came from the sub-basement door, a heavy steel slab at the end of the corridor. My heart thudded as I stared into the shadows, expecting movement, but there was nothing. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking, echoing unanswered. I grabbed a flashlight, my legs like lead, and crept toward the dining hall first. Its tables pushed against the walls, empty and dim. No one. The sub-basement door was next, its small window dark, locked tight. I pressed my ear to it, holding my breath, but heard only silence. I stepped back, my mind racing. Was it a prank? The head chef, Mike, loved messing with newbies, but he was upstairs running the event. Besides, the thump was too forceful, too isolated. I remembered Carla's face when she warned me, the way her voice dropped. "Ignore anything you hear down there." Why? What did she know? I scanned the corridor, the shadows thicker now, almost moving. My flashlight beam trembled, catching nothing but dust. I told myself it was pipes, or a loose crate falling, but the air felt wrong, like it was pressing against me. Another sound, a faint shuffle, like someone shifting their weight. My stomach dropped. I'd heard footsteps before, clear as day, but found no one. Now this? I backed toward my station, clutching the flashlight, my knife left behind. The basement wasn't just empty, it was alive, watching, waiting. I thought of JJ, the veteran dishwasher who'd worked here a decade. He dodged my questions about the basement, his face tightening. Did he know something? As I reached my table, a creak echoed from the dining hall, sharp and deliberate. My breath caught. Someone, or something, was down here and I was running. Out of excuses to deny it, I forced myself back to work, my hands unsteady, the flashlight now on the table beside me. The basement's hum was deafening in the silence, every creak amplifying my fear. I tried to focus, slicing ham with mechanical precision. But Carla's warning and JJ's unease gnawed at me. The footsteps, the thump, they weren't random. Something was wrong down here and I was alone with it. I glanced at the corridor, its shadows deeper, almost pulsing. Was I imagining it? Then I saw it. A figure in black, clear as day, walking past the corridor toward the dining hall. My heart stopped. They wore the kitchen staff's uniform, black shirt, black cap, but moved too quietly, too fast. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice echoing unanswered. I called again, "I'm over here!" But the figure vanished around the corner. My legs shook as I grabbed the flashlight, torn between running upstairs and checking. What if they were trapped? Or worse, what if they weren't staff? I crept toward the dining hall, the beam shaking in my hand. The room was empty, tables untouched, no sign of anyone. My breath hitched as I approached the sub-basement door, its window a black void. I tried the handle, locked, just like before. Relief flickered, but then it came again. A loud thump like a dodgeball against the door, so forceful I stumbled back. I shouted, "Mike, is that you?" Thinking it was the chef's prank, but the silence mocked me. No laughter, no footsteps, nothing. My flashlight swept the corridor, finding only dust and concrete. No one was there. Panic clawed at me. I'd seen someone, heard them, but the basement was empty. Was it a trick? Someone hiding, watching me squirm? I remembered a story Carla told, about a worker who quit after hearing voices down here. Was this why JJ avoided the basement? My mind screamed to run, but my feet were rooted, the thumps echoing in my skull. I backed away, the door's window staring like an eye. What if someone was on the other side, waiting? The basement wasn't just a workplace, it was a trap, and I was its target. I bolted up the stairs, my legs shaking, the basement's darkness chasing me. In the main kitchen, the hum of voices and clatter of pans felt like a lifeline. I found Carla, my voice trembling as I spilled everything. The footsteps, the thumps, the figure in black. She didn't laugh. Her face tightened, and she whispered, "I told you to stay away." JJ, wiping dishes nearby, overheard and shook his head. 10 years here and I've only gone down there once, he said, his eyes distant. Don't go back alone. Their words confirmed it. Something was wrong with that basement and I'd felt it firsthand. I finished my shift upstairs, refusing to return below. The footsteps, the thumps, the figure, they weren't pranks. Maybe it was a worker sneaking around, or the building's quirks amplifying my fear, but the terror was real. I couldn't shake the image of that black-clad figure vanishing into the shadows, or the thump that answered my shouts with silence. I quit a week later, taking a job at a diner with bright lights and no basements. But the fear followed me. Every creak at night, every shadow in a hallway brought it back. That night taught me to trust my instincts, to listen when my gut screams danger. It wasn't just about surviving that shift. It was about learning, to face the unknown. I started carrying a flashlight, checking my surroundings, and never working alone in isolated places. I talked to Carla before I left, and she admitted others had heard things too. Whispers, knocks, shadows no one could explain. The club's history was murky. Old rumors of workers quitting over haunted basements. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I believed in fear, and that basement wielded it like a weapon. I'm stronger now, but I still avoid dark, empty places. The basement showed me how fear can paralyze, but also how to push through it. I share this because we all face moments when the dark feels alive, when we're alone with our doubts. That night wasn't just a scare, it was a lesson in courage. So here's what haunts me. If you heard footsteps in the dark, felt eyes, you couldn't see, would you run or would you face it, knowing the truth might be worse? Tell me, because I'm still finding my answer. You've made it to the end, but the stories haven't ended. They never do. The places you heard about tonight, they still exist. The people, some vanished, some stayed quiet. And the ones who told us these stories, many wish they hadn't. Now, you've heard them too. That makes you part of this. Not just a viewer, a witness. If something in your room feels just a little off tonight, if you hear a noise you can't place or wake up at 3:17 a.m. for no reason at all, don't panic. Just remember, the stories don't always stay on the screen. Sometimes they come looking for listeners, but this is only the beginning. We've collected more stories, more cases, more accounts too disturbing to be ignored. So subscribe and come back if you dare. Next time, we go deeper. Next time, we don't knock before we enter.